Hello and welcome back to my studio. Today I want to talk to you about a critical technique for Impressionist painters. It's called Impasto. I'm sure you've heard of this technique, but are you applying it? Maybe this video is going to help you think about it a bit more and start bringing Impasto into your painting process. Let's have a look at this technique, how to achieve it, and some basic ideas that you may be able to incorporate into your painting. Okay, now Impasto has been around for a long time, and as the name suggests, it's kind of like a thick paste derived from Italian, I think it is. And of course it means applying a thick layer of paint. Now this could be the entire painting, it could be a part of the painting to emphasize something, but the beauty of Impasto is that it really creates that lovely three-dimensionality, that texture, also vibrant colors and a more pure response to the color. And there are many ways to achieve Impasto. The end result, of course, though, is a thick layer of paint or a thick dollop of paint somewhere where you want that. But are you using Impasto? Now, one of the toughest lessons that I seem to have with my art students is getting the idea of using Impasto into the actual painting. Now, why is this? Why is it so difficult? Well, for a beginner, it is difficult because there's so much else that you're worried about. And probably the biggest concern for beginners is simply getting a drawing that looks reasonably good and then getting some color into that as well. And that's pretty much where a lot of paintings are abandoned, and it kind of abandoned halfway, unfortunately. So taking the next step and applying more layers of paint and creating that three-dimensionality or that texture is incredibly difficult. Now there are videos on my channel about dealing with fear and uncertainty and also painting in a loose style. But to make the leap from talking about it and getting that idea into your head and actually doing it is tough because the potential for failure is so off-putting. I want to suggest to you though that having a go with Impasto is going to increase the chances of a successful painting, one that is in fact way above the general level of painting. What I find is that when I started using Impasto with a lot more confidence and more regularly, my painting improved very, very quickly. The reason for that is that I wasn't stuck in that in-between limbo phase where you just seem to spread your paint and then smooth it down and then put more paint and smooth it down, and you end up with something that is pretty much all a middle value painting. There's a drawing, there's some color, but there's no real light, there's no energy, there's no excitement, and we're just missing so much. Impasto brings that into your painting. I would suggest that every painting you do, whether it's a portrait or a landscape or a still life, unless you are trying to achieve a photorealist, flat, old master style painting, anything that is resembling an impressionist approach, you must introduce Impasto painting. You can use a brush, you can use a painting knife, you can use your fingers, you can use any other objects that might make sense to you. An old credit card, all of that will work. I'm going to show you a few examples of Impasto here or there, but you can also find this in your art books or researching artists, impressionist artists, and have a look at those paintings from the point of view of Impasto. Where has the artist used thick paint? Now, of course, with artists like Vincent van Gogh and some of the other impressionists that you are familiar with, you will notice a lot of Impasto. But maybe there is so much Impasto going on that it kind of just becomes almost invisible, and you're not thinking about it as a possibility for your own painting. But it is a possibility, and in fact it has to become part of your painting style. Whether you use Impasto to emphasize something specifically, a strong channel of light perhaps in the focal area, or whether you use it across most of the painting, as I've done in a couple of the examples I'm showing you, or perhaps you are using a painting knife and creating something that is even more abstract with lots of thick buttered on layers of paint. It doesn't matter what approach you use, as long as impasto is being used as a way to emphasize something important and also create that three-dimensional textured element, the one that makes you want to go up to the painting and almost touch it, and you get that tactile sensation, because that's what a painting should be. Two things: the illusion of the subject and also the physical nature of it, that thick layer of paint or all of those textures. You can carve into soft paint, you can apply thick paint over more thick paint, build it up. Just a few obvious things to remember though is the older fat over lean concept. So if you put a thick layer of paint on and then the next day you put a thin layer of paint over that thick paint, you're going to get cracking paint. That thin layer is going to dry too quickly and it's just going to be pulled. So use the basics, of course, of applying more paint over thinner layers and work that way. But I find that when you work with impasto, you generally tend to work quicker. The painting actually develops a lot quicker as well. And I have had no problems with paint cracking, because I start off with that thin layer and then get thicker and thicker, wet over wet, and everything dries in good order and there's no problem with cracking. Now, of course, impasto is great with oils, great with acrylics. You can even use it to an extent with gouache, but not too thick, otherwise that is going to crack. And I guess you can also use other types of mediums like acrylic paste and modeling paste and things like that. I don't really do that. For me, it's simply paint out the tube. So oils and acrylics are my go-to mediums for impasto. So this is simply to give you the idea that you can use impasto, or to kind of remind you not to forget the layers of impasto. Why don't you go back to your painting and put in a nice thick juicy layer of paint in the focal area, or in the nice bit of light across the road or something like that, or on a tree trunk where the sun is hitting it. Put a really thick buttery layer of paint on that and see what it does. See how that color punch really brings the painting to life, and how that textural element adds so much more interest to the painting as well. Alright, so that's the idea. Give it some thought, play around with the idea of impasto, and then put it into practice. Make it part of your painting process. Alright, okay, let me know how it goes. Let me know your ideas on impasto. Have you had success with it, or are you going to try it out for the first time? And if you're interested in my painting school, don't forget there's a free course for you up here, and there's one or two others on the school as well. You can enroll and just get started. And please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Lots more coming your way, and of course there's always something to learn. Painting is a never-ending learning experience. Until next time, enjoy your painting, and cheers for now.